Washington, D.C. was buzzing. Not with tourists, not with politicians doing their usual song and dance, but with whispers, dangerous whispers. Whispers that floated through Capitol Hill and trembled in the marble corridors of the House of Representatives. Rumors of something big, something explosive, something involving one of the most controversial members of Congress, Representative Ilhan Omar. It all started with a tip, an anonymous whistleblower who went by the code name Falcon Eye. This mysterious figure leaked documents to the newly restructured Department of Justice, now under the iron-willed leadership of Attorney General Pam Bondi, President Trump's fierce legal commander. Bondi had a reputation for taking down corruption with brutal efficiency, and when she got her hands on the files, her eyes lit up with a fire that had been absent since the 2020s battles against big tech and deep state networks. The documents were damning. They outlined a complex web of nonprofit organizations connected to Omar, organizations that received millions in federal funding. At first glance, they appeared to be humanitarian in nature, focused on refugee relief, voter outreach, and educational services for underprivileged communities. But when Bondi's forensic financial team dug deeper, a different picture emerged. The money had been funneled through a shell corporation based in Mogadishu, Somalia, Omar's birthplace, and then rerouted through offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. From there, it vanished into a fog of private accounts, luxury real estate, and encrypted crypto wallets. The scam had netted nearly $46 million over 4 years. The DOJ couldn't act on this alone. It needed air cover. President Trump, now in his second term, was informed during a late-night strategy session in the Situation Room. He leaned back in his chair, folded his hands, and grinned. "This," he said, "is going to shake D.C. to its core." Trump immediately brought in Tom Homan, the no-nonsense director of Homeland Security, and Byron Donalds, now chair of the Oversight Committee. Together, they prepared for what would be one of the most high-profile congressional reckonings in modern American history. Meanwhile, back in Minnesota, Ilhan Omar was unaware of the storm brewing. She had just finished a keynote address on equity in global governance at a university event in Minneapolis. To the public, she was poised, confident, and determined. But inside, something gnawed at her. She had heard chatter in her inner circle. Someone had flipped. Someone was talking. Her suspicions grew when one of her closest aides, Jamil Abdi, went dark. No texts, no calls, nothing. He had disappeared 3 days ago after reportedly meeting with someone from the DOJ. Omar's security team began sweeping her home and office for surveillance bugs. Too late. By Friday, Attorney General Bondi went live on national television. "We have uncovered overwhelming evidence of misappropriation of federal funds by individuals in Congress." One name repeatedly appears in the center of this web, Representative Ilhan Omar. The media exploded. Conservative networks lit up. Social media was on fire. Hashtags like #OmarScam and #JusticeNow trended for 72 hours straight. Even liberal outlets, stunned by the undeniable paper trail, hesitated to defend her. Ilhan Omar was blindsided. That night, she held a private emergency meeting with her crisis team in D.C. Her usually calm demeanor cracked. She slammed a folder shut, stood up, and shouted, "This is a political hit job. They won't get away with this." But even she wasn't sure anymore. Was it political theater? Or had her past finally caught up with her? 3 days after Bondi's press conference, Capitol Hill was in chaos. Protesters from both sides of the aisle swarmed the steps of the Capitol. Some demanded Omar's resignation. Others screamed that it was all a witch hunt, comparing her situation to the early Trump impeachments. Cable news anchors were having a field day, but none of it could drown out what was coming next. Behind closed doors, Byron Donalds opened a bipartisan oversight committee hearing, though it was clear where the firepower lay. Armed with newly declassified documents and the cooperation of international law enforcement partners, Donalds launched into what he called one of the most disgusting violations of the public's trust in recent history. Ilhan Omar had no choice but to appear. Her legal team fought to delay her testimony, but Donalds wouldn't budge. President Trump was watching closely, and the American people were demanding answers. She entered the chamber in a tailored navy blue suit, head held high, flanked by attorneys. The chamber was packed. Reporters, lawmakers, cameras, all focused on her. but even the sharpest suit couldn't hide the sweat on her brow. Donald's wasted no time. He walked through how federal grants meant for refugee assistance had been siphoned into shell companies. Then he brought out something new, sworn affidavits from former employees of Omar's nonprofits. One after the other, they told the same story, funds being transferred for administrative services that didn't exist. Paper trails leading to foreign accounts. A consulting firm registered under a false name that was allegedly run by a distant cousin of Omar. Then came the blow that turned the entire chamber into a gasping, murmuring madhouse. Representative Omar, Donald said as he held up a document, "Are you aware that this company, Munatech Solutions, was traced back to a residence in Mogadishu that your brother owns?" Omar's mouth tightened. She leaned toward her attorney and whispered. Cameras caught the moment, a visible crack in her confidence. "I decline to answer on the grounds of pending litigation," she finally said, invoking the Fifth Amendment. It was the third time she'd done so that hour. And the fourth time, Donald's raised an eyebrow. "You were elected to represent the people. But today, you hide behind the Fifth while we expose what you've really been doing with their money." Across town, in the White House, Trump was watching live coverage from the Roosevelt Room with Pam Bondi, Elon Musk, now an official White House tech advisor, and Tom Homan. The president was eating popcorn. "She's cooked," he said flatly. "You can see it in her eyes. She thought she could dance through this. But we have the receipts." Bondi nodded. "It gets worse. We've confirmed encrypted transfers made from her charity's account to political activist groups in Somalia linked to extremism. We're preparing to release the information to the press." Musk chimed in, "This'll cause a tech quake too. The transactions moved through blockchain tech designed to bypass U.S. regulators. The companies involved will be exposed. And their connections to congressional staffers? That's going to be explosive." Meanwhile, Ilhan Omar's inner circle was fracturing. A second aide, Rana Yusuf, was now cooperating with authorities in exchange for immunity. In sworn testimony, she admitted to falsifying documents and backdating financial entries. She also revealed that Omar was personally involved in the approval of the shell company agreements. When the news hit that night, Omar's team went into full crisis mode. Her lawyers accused the DOJ of political targeting. Liberal commentators called it a strategic distraction from Trump's second-term initiatives. But even they couldn't argue with the math. Millions were missing. Dozens of transactions traced. Multiple witnesses flipping. And the public? They were furious. According to a new Rasmussen poll, 72% of Americans believed Omar should step down pending investigation. Even among Democrats, support for her had dropped nearly 30%. Omar, once a rising star in the progressive movement, now sat alone in her office, staring at a television that showed her name plastered across every network ticker. She whispered, "They can't do this to me." But deep down, she feared the worst. Because she knew they already had. By the following week, the fallout was accelerating like a runaway train. Multiple nonprofit directors tied to Omar's foreign aid program had been detained in Kenya and Somalia through coordinated action by Interpol and U.S. intelligence partners. News broke that one of the NGO heads, Nasser Warsame, director of Future Aid Coalition, had attempted to flee Nairobi using a forged South African passport. He was caught at the airport with $300,000 in cash and an encrypted satellite phone. The feds believed he was planning to vanish forever. That arrest blew the doors wide open. Warsame flipped almost immediately, according to leaks. He gave investigators a flash drive containing confidential communications with members of Omar's legislative staff. One of those emails, written less than a year ago, contained a chilling line. "You don't need to worry about scrutiny. Elon has it covered. Our friends in the State Department are in place. The money pipeline is safe." That quote hit like a thunderbolt across political circles. Now the focus expanded beyond Omar and the nonprofits to potential State Department insiders who may have helped rubber-stamp the foreign transfers without proper oversight. The storm reached a crescendo as President Trump ordered a full audit of all foreign aid packages approved between 2019 and 2024. "This is what happens when radicals like Omar think they can operate above the law," Trump said in a primetime Oval Office address. "My administration will investigate every dollar. We're going to get it back, and we're going to stop this corruption for good." His speech was met with roaring applause from MAGA loyalists, while the mainstream media fumbled to contain the fallout. Even left-leaning outlets like CNN were beginning to break ranks. Ilhan Omar facing criminal exposure blared across one banner during a grim panel discussion. MSNBC ran segments questioning her future in Congress. Some Democrat strategists privately admitted it was becoming impossible to defend her. But the true implosion came on a Thursday afternoon during yet another closed-door hearing. This time it was Rana Yusuf, Omar's former top aide, testifying under oath. Yusuf's testimony was surgical and cold. She outlined how Omar had handpicked the NGOs, coached staffers on what paperwork to file, and even helped launder money through legitimate U.S.-based charities that had no idea they were part of a broader scheme. She gave them dates, names, account numbers. She described meetings held at a condo in D.C. with no cameras or phones allowed, where plans were drafted not for humanitarian help but for money routing. And she described Omar as the mastermind. She was always careful, always indirect. But we all knew what she wanted. She didn't need to say it. She just gave the nod. The DOJ, now armed with mountains of evidence, was preparing charges. Leaks suggested a 21-count federal indictment was on the table, including wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to defraud the U.S. government, and obstruction of justice. Ilhan Omar's defense team scrambled to get ahead of it. They filed a motion to dismiss, citing political targeting, but judges weren't having it. The public pressure was too great and the evidence too damning. Meanwhile, inside the White House, a team of legal and intelligence experts met with Bondi, Trump, and DHS officials. It was clear, Omar's web extended farther than they thought. "We've got comms between her and a known extremist-linked figure in Istanbul," said a national security advisor. "She may have been using her platform to shield not just corruption but ideological manipulation of aid funds." Trump slammed his fist on the table. "This woman's been sitting in Congress while playing footsie with our enemies?" Pam Bondi nodded grimly. "We're looking at treason-adjacent conduct, Mr. President. We've never seen anything like this from a sitting congresswoman." Back in Minneapolis, Omar's local support had all but vanished. Donors pulled funding. Community leaders distanced themselves. Somali-American families who once saw her as a symbol of pride now demanded accountability. A mother of 3 stood in front of local news cameras holding a sign that read, "You stole from us. You lied to us. Step down." That night, Omar released a video statement online. Her eyes were red. Her voice cracked. "I've been the victim of lies, fear-mongering, and coordinated political attacks. But I will not resign. I am innocent. And I will fight this until my last breath." The comments were brutal. Even her usual defenders were silent. For the first time in her political career, Ilhan Omar stood completely alone. And the hammer was still on its way down. The walls were caving in. Fast. On a grim Monday morning, the Department of Justice officially unsealed a 21-count indictment against Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. Attorney General Pam Bondi took the podium at a packed press briefing, her voice cutting through the flash of cameras like a gavel in a silent courtroom. The charges include wire fraud, conspiracy to defraud the United States, obstruction of justice, and money laundering. The evidence presented will show a deliberate and systematic abuse of congressional power to enrich foreign operatives, family members, and herself. Bondi didn't stop there. She revealed that the Omar investigation had now expanded into a broader probe into congressional oversight of foreign aid, potentially implicating multiple members who looked the other way. Inside the Capitol, shock rippled like a lightning bolt. The Progressive Caucus held an emergency closed-door meeting. AOC, visibly shaken, left without comment. Rashida Tlaib posted a vague statement on social media lamenting a dark day for the People's Movement but carefully avoided Omar's name. The Democratic leadership, cornered and humiliated, had no choice but to act. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries issued a formal statement calling for Omar's immediate resignation. The American people deserve better. If the charges are true, Representative Omar has betrayed not only the trust of her district but of the entire nation. By Tuesday, the House Ethics Committee moved swiftly to suspend Omar from all committee assignments, pending the outcome of her trial. She was escorted from a closed-door Intelligence Committee briefing by Capitol Police, a moment caught on camera and replayed across every major news outlet. In response, Omar released another defiant video on X, formerly Twitter. Sitting in what appeared to be a hastily packed office, she stared straight into the camera. "This is nothing more than fascism wrapped in legalese. I'm being persecuted for standing up to imperialism, for representing a global cause. Donald Trump and his lackeys want to erase people like me. But I'm not going anywhere." But behind the scenes, her own staff were resigning en masse. Her chief of staff, communications director, and legislative counsel all submitted their letters within 24 hours. Her D.C. office was half empty by midweek. Volunteers stopped showing up. Donors weren't returning calls. The final blow came from within her own district. In Minneapolis, a grassroots coalition of Somali American leaders held a press conference outside the community center where Omar once launched her first city council campaign. These were the very people who had propelled her to national prominence. Their betrayal cut the deepest. "We believed in her," said Yusuf Ali, a respected community elder. "We believed she was one of us. But she used our support to build a machine of corruption. She stole from the poor, our poor, and she must face the consequences." Meanwhile, the trial preparation was underway at lightning speed. Bondi, backed by a high-powered legal team, had coordinated with federal prosecutors and intelligence agencies to secure hard evidence and secure witness protection for multiple whistleblowers. One of those whistleblowers? A former IT contractor who worked with Omar's campaign and admitted to setting up encrypted communication channels used to route money offshore. His testimony would be central to the prosecution's case. In a high-profile interview on Fox News, Bondi didn't hold back. Ilhan Omar didn't just bend the rules. She shattered them. This wasn't ignorance. This was calculated. This was criminal. And justice is coming. The White House, meanwhile, leaned into the narrative. Trump tweeted, or rather truthed, "Ilhan Omar scammed the American people and now she's melting down. What a disgrace to Congress. No sympathy, only consequences." Elon Musk replied to the same post. "Using tech to launder foreign aid? That ends now." Support for Omar plummeted. A poll by Trafalgar Group showed that 82% of Americans supported her resignation or expulsion from Congress. Calls poured in to Speaker Johnson's office, urging him to move forward with expulsion proceedings even before trial. The House floor was buzzing. Congressional Republicans, riding a wave of public anger and fresh off midterm momentum, introduced a resolution to expel Ilhan Omar from Congress. The resolution was co-sponsored by 47 lawmakers. Some Democrats joined quietly. No one wanted to be seen defending her. As night fell, footage aired on national television. Omar, walking out of the Capitol, shoulders hunched, flanked by attorneys, swarmed by flashing cameras and angry protesters chanting, "Resign! Resign! Resign!" She didn't speak. Her eyes darted around, searching for an escape route that no longer existed. And as she slipped into the back seat of a black SUV, gripping a manila folder and shaking slightly, even she realized the illusion of power she once held was gone. The trial began under the glare of the global spotlight. Every major network camped outside the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C., broadcasting live coverage with countdown clocks. The case wasn't just about Ilhan Omar anymore. It had come to symbolize a crucial turning point in America's war against corruption, and the public wanted justice served on a silver platter. Security was tight. Armed federal agents escorted the prosecution team through underground tunnels. Streets were barricaded. Protesters and counter-protesters clashed in waves outside the courtroom, screaming slogans and waving placards. Some called for Omar's imprisonment. Others cried political persecution. But as the prosecution opened its case, the fog of debate started to clear, and what remained was cold, hard evidence. Pam Bondi took the lead. She walked the jury through a timeline of financial deception. Dozens of wire transfers, encrypted chats, fake vendor invoices, and emails connecting Omar to international operatives. The centerpiece of the trial? A massive projection of a digital whiteboard linking nonprofits, shell companies, offshore accounts, all orbiting one name, Ilhan Abdullahi Omar. The jury watched in stunned silence as Bondi played video clips of Rana Yusuf's sworn deposition, complete with audio of Omar coaching staffers on how to reword aid applications to get around scrutiny. The clip was damning. "If the money gets through, the job is done. Don't worry about the receipts." The courtroom gasped. Even one of the jurors instinctively put their hand over their mouth. Then came the forensic accounting expert, a straight-laced Navy veteran named Jason Rowe, who confirmed through blockchain analysis that over $6.3 million in aid funds had been routed through various currencies and ultimately landed in accounts connected to Omar's family in Mogadishu, Nairobi, and Dubai. This wasn't a fluke or a one-off mistake, Rowe said calmly. It was systematic. This was designed to be invisible. Omar's defense team did their best to paint her as a victim of political targeting. They argued the money was mismanaged by rogue staffers. They even tried to deflect blame onto federal oversight agencies. But the prosecution dropped a surprise witness, a former State Department employee turned whistleblower who admitted to being bribed to approve Omar's grant proposals. She told me it was just expediting humanitarian relief. She paid me $20,000. I knew it was wrong. I was scared to say no. That sealed it. The media declared it a prosecutorial masterpiece. CNN's legal panel admitted the evidence was unspinnable. MSNBC's Joy Reid tried to suggest it was political vendetta, but even she had to concede. If these charges are true, we're looking at one of the most elaborate frauds in congressional history. Outside the courthouse, former ICE Director Tom Homan addressed reporters. We've been warning about this for years. Corruption masked as compassion. It stops here. And in the West Wing, Trump, standing with Bondi, Elon Musk, and VP J.D. Vance, declared a national anti-corruption initiative called America First Integrity Act. The act proposed real-time audit systems for foreign aid, stricter nonprofit scrutiny, and a congressional ethics reformation board. Musk unveiled new blockchain auditing tools designed to track every cent of federal spending. We're not just draining the swamp, Trump said. We're bulldozing it. On the final day of the trial, the jury took only 4 hours to deliberate. They returned to the courtroom. Omar, visibly exhausted, stood with clenched fists as the foreman read aloud. Count 1, guilty. Count 2, guilty. Count 3, all 21 counts, guilty. The judge delivered a fiery rebuke before handing down the sentence. Representative Omar, you violated the sacred trust given to you by the American people. You manipulated the machinery of democracy to fund a corrupt empire. For that, this court sentences you to 22 years in federal prison. Gasps filled the room. Omar blinked rapidly, mouth twitching, as marshals moved in. Her attorneys tried to comfort her, but she shrugged them off and shouted, "This is fascism. This is a lie. I fought for justice." But no one believed her anymore. As she was led away in cuffs, the press rushed to cover the moment. For some, it was vindication. For others, a warning. For most Americans watching from their living rooms, it was confirmation that no one, not even a sitting member of Congress, is above the law. The days that followed were electric. Congress passed Trump's America First Integrity Act with overwhelming support. Omar's seat was vacated. Special elections were announced. Her allies went silent. AOC unfollowed her. Rashida Tlaib offered prayers for her family, and nothing more. And in Minneapolis, where it all began, families gathered in parks, community centers, and schools. They spoke not of betrayal, but of rebuilding. A new Somali-American candidate emerged, promising transparency and reform. In a symbolic final act, President Trump signed the Integrity Act into law with Pam Bondi and Elon Musk at his side, vowing, "This isn't about revenge. It's about resurrection of truth, of accountability, of America." Ilhan Omar, now inmate number 44731 at a federal correctional facility in West Virginia, watched the coverage from her cell. For her, the story was over. But for the country, a new chapter had just begun.